Hello my friends and welcome back. It's Friday. Happy Friday to you. It's early morning. I've been doing hours of research and I have my coffee in a jar for some reason today. Don't ask me why. All my mugs are dirty. I'm gonna bring you a human story before we go on today. I want to introduce you to Vladimir Rakov, a Ukrainian dancer, winner of the Everybody Dance TV show, choreographer and artist. He died defending Ukraine on January 6th. He was only 30 years old. I think it's important that we watch these human stories. We put a face to the name, we put a face to the statistic, bring it more closer to us. He's a man like me and you, unless you're a woman, of course. Volodymyr joined the armed forces of Ukraine after the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022. So, a dance choreographer, the war starts, he drops everything and joins the armed forces. He served in the ranks of the 2nd Rifle Battalion of the 24th Mechanized Brigade. Volodymyr worked as an assistant choreographer in Dancing with the Stars show and was also an artist in the Gozar Dance Theater. And he was originally from Yevpatoria, Crimea. He was trained at dance schools in the USA, Broadway Dance Center, New York, Los Angeles. So this is a story of a Ukrainian hero who dropped his dreams, paused his life, and joined the armed forces to defend his homeland. Might be the story of me in a few years, who knows? I'm in Estonia. 200 kilometers from where I'm right now physically is the Russian border. That's why I want to keep these stories on our attention, because I'm going to be next. Have you heard that the flavored air category is quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking? It's a whole new movement towards better habits, led by the sponsor of today's video, Fume. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device that draws flavor through your mouth, not your lungs. It's a great way to satisfy your oral fixation with non-toxic flavors, free from nicotine or vapor, and it's safe to use anywhere. If you're used to vapor, Fume may not be as strong as you'd expect at first, but it also doesn't leave you in a hospital bed. Fume can be compared to a herbal tea if vapor was compared to a sticky soda. Not as sweet and a lot more natural. Psychology shows stopping a bad habit of cold turkey is very hard on your brain. Fume works by replacing your hand-to-mouth fixation, calming your nervous tension through fidgeting, and distracting you from your bad habit with delicious flavor. Fume has already helped over 300,000 people build better habits. Try Fume today, and if you order the Journey Pack now using my code Estonian, you'll get a free Fume topper, an awesome accessory to level up your experience. Go to tryfume.com/Estonian or scan the QR code on the screen. Thank you Fume for sponsoring today's video. Jar coffee! Now my friends, Trump has spoken so much. So outrageously, I gotta devote a whole segment to him and what he has said. I will let him speak for himself. All of these clips 1 minute long, don't worry about them, quite short. Let's just listen to it.
The price tag.
Well, maybe no price tag. Look, we're gonna have to see what happens because Denmark, we need this for national security. We need Greenland very badly. You look.
He's talking about Greenland, the biggest island in the world, which is Denmark. But they have their autonomy. And Trump is talking about either buying them or taking them over by force.
The Russian ships, the China ships, they're all over the place. They're, surrounding. Now, they have for a long time. That's a lane. But we need that for national security. So I don't know that Denmark has any right, title, and interest, and we're going to find that. But I can tell you, you saw the clips that were released.
Well, I'm not even gonna finish. The thing is, Trump wants Greenland. He wants it for United States security and to protect the Arctic regions and the US interests in the Arctic regions against Russia and China. Well, it is connected to Ukrainian war because it is, yes, Russia and China who are very, very active in the Arctic and pushing their agendas there. So, Trump wants Greenland. The thing is, the United States already has, and has had for the last 75 years, a strong military presence on Greenland. Greenland soil, so on Danish soil, you could say. They have always leased a base there. It's United States Air Force. Now, if I'm not mistaken, even United States Space Force is there. Nobody was expecting this, and Trump came out with this out of the blue, and everybody's talking about it suddenly. And it's not only Greenland, it's Canada. So,
we don't need Canada for that. We don't need Canada for lumber because we have big forests that we have, not utilized. In some cases, they're protected, which I can take that protection off. And you take down a tree and you grow a better tree. That's, pretty common. But we don't need anything. We don't need their fuel. We don't need their energy. We don't need their oil and gas. We don't need anything that they have. And I said to Trudeau, I said, why?
It is so strange because America and Canada, one of the steadfast, like the closest allies in NATO, their partnership, they're like brothers in my eyes. I mean, if you look at them from this part of the world, they're inseparable. So I don't really understand this aggressive tone against Canada and against Greenland. I mean, Denmark, Greenland is under Denmark, but they have their autonomy. But Denmark was one of the, compared to nowadays, one of the first countries to join NATO, one of the OG ones. I don't understand why I go against his allies like that. And it doesn't end there, my friends. This is like a Top Shop commercial, but wait, there's more, because now we're going to South America. We're going to go to Panama Canal. And now we have Keith Kellogg, Trump's special envoy on Ukraine, and he will explain to us a little bit also the Greenland and Canada situation along with the Panama Canal.
To understand, he's not trying to give something to Putin or to the Russians. He's actually trying to save Ukraine and save their sovereignty. And he's going to make sure that it's equitable and that it's fair. And he said that repeatedly.
So, Keith continues to explain that Trump has now understood that his promise of ending the war in 24 hours is unrealistic, which it is. It's impossible because Russian interests or wants in Ukraine are outside of Trump's control in any way. I mean, Trump, he loves to make deals, he loves to make threats, but there's nothing he can threaten Russia with that would make Putin end this war in 24 hours, because Russian economy is tanking already. He cannot tank it even further. Russian army is being destroyed already. You can destroy it further, but Putin doesn't really care about it. So he doesn't have the leverage to end it in 24 hours. The next date now has been set, first 100 days after Trump's inauguration. That's the new number everybody's talking about. Even that, looking from here, from Estonia, knowing a lot more about the Russian mindset, Russian idea of imperial, great Russia, 100 days is also unrealistic, and it's not going to happen. A few years might be more realistic. Keith Kellogg continues with
Biden made is the fact that he's never engaged in any conversations.
Blaming Biden about not talking to Putin.
With Putin. I mean, he hasn't talked to him in over 2 years. He needs to talk to him. That's one great thing the president does, is the president does talk to him.
See, this is where I don't agree with almost any of Trump's methodics, his strategies, but I agree with some of the outcomes. For example, frightening the European leaders into spending more on military. I do agree with that. Thing is, I don't agree that we should talk to Putin, because the time of talk, the time of diplomacy, which talk eventually is, diplomacy, is over. The moment you fire the first shots, the rules of engagement are changed. They're not words anymore, they're bullets. That's how it is. And the one who wins on the battlefields wins. You can talk and make deals, but if you're fighting on the battlefield, that's what eventually makes the outcome. So there's no point in talking to Putin right now. I don't agree with Keith Kellogg here. You can talk to him, but they're still going to attack Ukraine. And in the end, you got to arm Ukraine to end the conflict, because Russians will not back down, because they don't want to. And they don't need to, because the man who controls the country doesn't care about the tanking of the economy or the low quality of life of the Russian people. And the Russian economy can tank even further. There's nothing to threaten Putin with. So ending the war in any kind of timely fashion, 24 hours, 100 days, it's not possible. What is possible is destroying the Russian army to the level that Putin is forced to end this invasion. That's how you talk to the Russians. Now, my friends, Keith Kellogg continues to open up about Trump's Panama Canal focus. I mean, it's not a new topic.
Two things. One with Panama, the Land Bridge Group is a Chinese group that's actually running the Panama Canal. They've got their headquarters on the Atlantic side.
So Panama Canal is controlled by a company that is owned by the Chinese right now. Pretty much you can say that the CCP has a major controlling stake over the Panama Canal, and 70% of the US shipping goes through it.
In Cologne, and they basically do run the canal, and the president's right about that. And when it comes to Greenland, people forget that President Andrew Johnson tried to buy Greenland when he went after Alaska as well. And at the end of World War II, you had President Truman offer $100 million to buy Greenland then. So this is not a new idea. This is actually an older idea that's come around. So when you look at what the president's doing, he's really kind of thinking out of the box.
I do agree with United States need to have military presence around Panama because majority of their exports go through that. It's a major shipping lane, and United States military presence being on Greenland. I mean, they already have it on Greenland almost for a century. They have had it, continue having it, enlarging it, add another base there. I'm sure Greenland would agree to it because even now United States is leasing land to have a military base there. I don't see the need to occupy or military force or buy the whole island. There's just no need for it. It's an ally, it's not an enemy. Oh, there's many more videos. I don't want to take too much of your time, but yeah, Trump commented about him wanting to meet Putin. Keith Kellogg also said about this. They need to make this dialogue now. I don't agree with it. The only ones that speak now are guns, not words. And Pskov, Kremlin spokesperson, officially responded to that also, that Putin is also interested in meeting Trump, and the time schedule should be about 6 months after the inauguration, so they're bound to meet. Now, let's watch this topic. Trump is frightening European Union countries, NATO countries, into spending more on military. Now, I don't agree with the methods he's doing it with. He's dividing NATO, attacking his allies verbally. But I agree with the results. Estonia has been trying to do that ever since we were accepted into the EU 2004. Estonia, Baltics and Finland actually were all talking always about how the Russian threat never went away. You gotta focus on your defense capabilities. We gotta be able to defend Europe on our own. But European Union countries, sleepy, importing Russian gas, they like this. And now the gas was used as a weapon against them, and suddenly we were right. Countries are still very slow to react, so Trump scares the hell out of them, saying that we will pull out of NATO if you don't spend 5% on military spending. I mean, European countries won't go there, but they are all raising their spending, some by percentage, some by 2. I like the results. I don't like the methods. If Trump demands for 5% spending on defense, that really plunges European NATO members into crisis mode, then they haven't been paying attention. It seems to me that the point of this demand is that it's designed not to be met. Yeah, nobody's going to 5. Except for Poland and maybe Estonia, because we are the 2 leading countries in Europe with military spending percentage. But European countries are raising the stakes, and you can see it in this chart. This is 2021 defense spending, and this is 2024 defense spending. And look at this. Poland with over 4.2%. Estonia with 3.4% right now. I think we're going to go to 4 also. We have USA here, Lithuania and Latvia. What a coincidence that the biggest spenders are Poland, Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia, next to Russia. Because we know what the Russians are. They never changed. But Europe just decided to have a 30-year sleep festival after the fall of the Soviet Union. Well, I'm glad they're up now. I want to see all of the European Union countries here at 3 to 4%. And I do have to say this to United States viewers, that I don't think Europe has to be dependent on the US for defense. US doesn't need to pay for the defense of Europe. We need to pay for it. European countries do need to wake up. I don't agree with Trump weakening NATO image by attacking NATO allies, but I do think that Europeans, Central and Southern European country leaders are sleeping. They think they can have a free ride, not on the US, but also on us. We, the Baltics, we're small countries, not the richest, but we are paying so much for defense because we have no other option. And then we got countries like Spain and Italy, France, who could do a lot more. I know I just offended a lot of people, but I don't have a choice. Russia is right here. In the United States, Jimmy Carter was sent to his last journey. I don't know if you say it like that. There was Jimmy Carter's funeral. And in that funeral, there were Trump sitting next to Obama. There's a video about it. They were talking. And some lip readers, the guys who read from the lips, they say that Trump says, I pulled out of that. It's the conditions. Can you imagine that? Obama laughs and Trump's added, and after I will. Call me at the foyer after, yep. Can you just, it should be good. I can't talk. We have to find a quiet place sometime. This is a matter of importance and we need to do this outside so we can deal with it, certainly today. Trump really wanted to talk to Obama about something. I'm not going to go into more, but there are plenty of videos coming out of this funeral of who sits next to who. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's wife were sitting next to each other, not speaking to each other. It's United States internal, but I'm not going to go into it. There's plenty of videos about it. If you want to analyze it, you can go crazy with it. Now let's jump back to Europe, jump back to the Baltics. This is just one tweet, one guy ranting about how Russia is again taking the Baltics, but it's part of the bigger picture. Hey Baltics, since the US and Russia have embarked on collecting Pokemons, we would formally like for you to know that you are next after Ukraine and Finland. No one is going to save you now. And I'm here to say that we really like our allies in NATO and the European Union, but we are not making military decisions hoping for them to come to our rescue. We are doing everything, we're buying everything. Our military expenditure right now is over 3% and it's going to be over 4% and even higher. And we're buying the high tech, the biggest and newest Western tech there is. Not tanks though, I'm going to get into that also. For Estonia, there's no free lunches. We are not a rich country, but we are a country thanks to the fact that we're taking Russian threat very, very seriously. Here is another chart. It's easier to understand this chart. Like 2014, light blue color right here. You can see this defense spending 2024. And Poland is at 4.12, Estonia 3.43. And then we got Latvia, Lithuania, Finland. And there are countries who are not meeting NATO guidelines. Now, I don't agree with Trump's methods, as I say, but I do see these countries who are not meeting NATO 2% as freeloaders. You know why I call them that? Because we are the one paying. We are the one allocating money in Estonia to military spending because we are the wall. You see Game of Thrones, like we are the watch on the wall. We're the ice wall, Finland and the Baltics and Poland. We have no option but to spend on military, and we're talking billions, so that these countries wouldn't have to. I don't like it. What I don't like, this video has a lot what I don't like. I'm gonna have a sip of my jar coffee. Tastes like a jar. Well, Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, Spain, Austria, Italy. Unfortunately, Poland is also in this list. This is country's export graph to Kyrgyzstan after the full-scale invasion. And you can see all of them have the similar hike. This is, in the clearest way, yeah, it's going to Kyrgyzstan, but in the clearest way, it's going to Russia. This is sanctions circumventing. And the fact that European countries have not stopped this or controlled this and the graph is going up like that means that, yeah, we have these sanctions, we're so proud about them, and we export to Russia through Kyrgyzstan. I don't like it. It needs to change. It's shameful, and whoever changes it with which methods, even if it's Trump with his frightening and very bad communication, but if these charts change, I like it. Now, I want to jump back to Estonian defense capabilities. I'm sorry I'm jumping back and forth with the topics here, but I'm trying to keep it interesting and like mixed up. I'll open it up with Egypt, but it's connected. Congratulations, Egypt. Egypt will be the first of the 10 countries that operate K9 artillery to have anti-ship capabilities as a coastal defense purpose. So K9 is a South Korean fantastic self-propelled artillery system. Estonia has them. A lot of the countries actually, Turkey, Poland, Norway, Finland, India, Australia, Egypt, Romania, a lot of the countries have them. We bought these K9s from South Korea. We field them right now, and to illustrate the fact that you can modify them so much is that Egypt uses them as anti-ship capabilities. That is a great compliment for their weapon system, weapon platform. Estonia didn't only buy K9 from South Korea, we also bought HIMARS from the United States. Yes, we did. We're taking this long-range capability very seriously. If you think about how countries buy weapons, what is the math, the algorithm, the equation they do to know what amount of weapons to buy? It might be different for Britain or France, where they're going to fight. Well, for us Estonians, we are not going to fight anywhere else than here against Russia. And like a few squads in Afghanistan or Iraq, but we're not exporting our javelins or K9s there. We're buying javelins, K9s and HIMARS. How much are we going to buy? Well, before full-scale invasion, there was an equation of how many tanks are in the Russian Western Army Group. We got a number, and we bought as many javelins plus 20% just in case, 20% more. After the full-scale invasion, seeing what Ukrainians did with javelins and seeing that Russians are moving their tanks from the Far East or the tanks in Russian warehouses to Ukraine, Estonians were like, in the defense sector, were like, okay, this don't work. We gotta go crazy. We gotta go full steroids like Poland. How many tanks are in the Russian Federation at all together, even those who are rusting on the field and are never going to move? How many do they have? We got a number. We're going to buy that amount of javelins plus 20%. This is the new equation of the Estonian Defense Forces. This is why we're at 3.4% of spending now. We're going to go up. Last year, 2020, sorry, it was 2 years ago now, 2023, Estonia was one of the biggest purchasers of ammunition in Europe, not percentage-wise, but number-wise. Not like percentage of the country's GDP, but actual purchase power. We're a small Baltic country and we were the biggest buyer of ammunition. That says something. We're buying everything. We're putting it in warehouses all over the country. Not one great warehouse, don't worry about it. The Russians cannot bombard them. They're all scattered all over the country. You bombard one, nothing happens. We have hundreds of warehouses. We're getting ready to destroy every Russian tank. Not the ones that they are focusing here in Estonia, but every Russian tank they have in their country. We're looking at whether to buy tanks against Russian tanks or javelins. We found out, okay, javelins are way cheaper. Drones are way cheaper, so Estonia does not have any tanks. We're not buying any tanks. We're buying the cheapest, most effective systems to destroy Russian tanks. Because we're good with destroying their infantry anyway. And we have HIMARS and K9s, and we have a great big reserve army which can handle the infantry. So, Russian tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, they will be obliterated because we're buying up everything. That's how serious we take it. And we are taking the pain because in Estonia, I mean, the inflation has been great. Prices have been rising. People are losing money. The population is losing wealth. But we have our country, culture, language, everything. We're focusing on defense. And then we have these freeloaders in Southern Europe. That's why I'm quite salty about them, because I see my people right here paying the price so they can be freeloaders. I don't like Trump's methods, but I want the results. Okay, I'm going to jump to the topic of why Estonia doesn't buy tanks, because there is an issue with a lot of tanks nowadays. And this thread summarizes it perfectly. Today, thanks to small order quantities since 1990 and inflation, main battle tank costs more than 20 million euros each. This is unsustainable. I mean, Russian T-72, making a brand new T-72 cost about 1 to 2 million, 10 times less. European tanks, 20 million. If all 30 European members of NATO agree to order 300 new tanks, or some 9,000 in total, this would dramatically reduce the cost. Now, yeah, this would be true. It would reduce the cost, but you don't need tanks. Tank is not obsolete. I'm not claiming it is. But for a country like Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia, there's no point in buying tanks if you cannot allocate billions onto it. If you have 3 billions, you can buy tanks, let's say 200-300 tanks, or you can buy thousands, tens of thousands of javelins and drones, or drones in the number of almost hundreds of thousands, that destroy tanks. It is so much more cheaper and efficient to buy the weapon that destroys a tank than the tank itself. This is why Estonians are not going to have a tank army ever. It's just not effective. If you have a lot of money, yeah, you can do it, but you don't need to. And just as I finish with this, we have two news here that says that Lithuania and Sweden are buying 44 new Leopard 2A8 tanks and CV-90 infantry fighting vehicles. So yeah, Lithuania, our Baltic brothers, still decides to go with the tanks. Allocate 1.5 billion euros to it, very expensive. If they want to make that choice, that is fine. It's very nice to have 44 newest Leopard tanks. I would still prefer to have 10,000 javelins and 100,000 drones with that money. But it's good that we have the drones and javelins and they got the tanks. We put it together since we're one great Baltic front anyway. If any of us is attacked, we're basically unified armies here. Let's put our capabilities together. I'm glad to see it. Now finally, my friends, let's jump to Ukraine and analyze a battle. It's the second Kursk offensive, the ones that started on 5th of January as a surprise. There was a brief panic on Russian forces, and then so suddenly it all ended. Let's analyze it. And depending on what was the purpose of this new offensive, you can say if it was a failure or not, but it did not manage to take a lot of new ground. A few thoughts about the second Kursk offensive. Analyzing the operation through publicly available sources. This operation is obviously inspired by the first offensive in August, and it tried to recreate the successes to breach using similar tactics, starting with deployment of electronic warfare jammers near the front lines to disturb communications with the Russian defensive positions and the employment of certain UAV systems. A company tactical group reinforced by Vincent I's mine-clearing vehicles and Bergepanzers and tanks from an unknown battalion advanced under the cover of smoke screens towards the Russian village of Berdin. Some observations I made are following. There were no aircraft interceptor UAVs supporting this operation, so much of the Russian IS air fleet was active even after the electronic warfare wave, which allowed artillery observation and rotary wing aviation as well as fiber optic FPVs to operate. We're talking here that the Russian Ka-52s were still able to fire their missiles, unguided, they put the nose up and fire and they go down. And fiber optic Russian FPVs did a lot of carnage. The first wave of Ukrainian armored vehicles, out of 10, like 3-4 were destroyed with fiber optics. So it wasn't a massive breakthrough and full chaos like the first Kursk offensive. It was expected to be, but it wasn't. Another observation is that the Russian rear communications were not targeted like they were in August through the deployment of drone-dropped jamming sticks. And additionally, we didn't see any small mortar AGLs transported with the units which would have doubled their firepower, as friendly mortars were too far away to support them. And in the end, I will add it on my part that the attacking force was not a brigade size. It was smaller than a brigade. We're talking about battalions here, which is not enough to strike at 3 different areas, which the strike happened. I mean, it was possibly 3 battalions, 3 companies, whichever it was smaller than a brigade, which is too small to be any kind of offensive force. So this was a local counteroffensive that did cause panic for 1 to 2 days among the Russian ranks, but then everything stabilized and now it's over. And it didn't result in any new areas controlled, any Russian units fully destroyed. You could say it's a failure. Now, the Kursk salient in totality, as I said it many times, it's not a failure. It's designed to keep Russian troops there. We're talking over 100,000 Russian troops pinned down in Russia, not in Ukraine. That's a success. But this local Kursk operation number 2, that was a failure. Now let's talk about Russia's weapons export. Serbia has terminated some of its military contracts with Russia. The Chief of General Staff of the Serbian Army said that fulfilling the terms of some contracts is simply impossible under the current conditions. We have terminated some contracts and postponed some others. Let us recall, for example, that Russia produces only 250 tanks a year, although Medvedev promised 1,500. Yeah, oh, how can Russia produce only 250? Why are you crazy? I mean, they're sending thousands into Ukraine every month. Yes, they are refurbishing old Soviet tanks. The Russian capabilities now, the real capabilities, not on paper, but real out of the factories, about 250 brand new tanks. We're talking T-80s, T-90s, T-72s, brand new ones. They still do produce T-72s, brand new ones. 250. I mean, this is about 2 months worth of tanks in Ukraine. That's what they can produce a year in Russia. What they're using is old Soviet tanks, T-60s, T-55s, T-72s, T-80s, T-90s, not so much recently. They're refurbishing them, adding new turrets, fixing the tracks, replacing the engines. They do run out. The warehouses are becoming more and more empty. They do run out at some point, and then the Russian tank production is not going to keep up. So, how are they able to export? They're not. They cannot export. There are countries like Turkey, India, who have active Russian weapon contracts. India, for example, is supposed to buy S-400s, anti-air defense systems. Well, no way they can export them. They can produce like a few of them a year, and Ukraine is destroying more than they can produce. There's no way Russia can export. We're talking about the loss of Syria. We're talking about loss of maybe some African countries. Russian empire becoming smaller and smaller. But we also have to talk about the loss of hundreds of billions worth of weapons exports, which are not happening right now. They cannot fulfill the contracts simply because they cannot produce these weapons they promised to the countries. India, Turkey, Serbia, no way. So this is another billions lost in revenue and the trust lost, because everybody sees how the S-300s, S-400s, Russian tanks, helicopters, how they're performing in Ukraine. Not the best advertisement for the Russian military-industrial complex. It's a different story with the United States weapons, though. Hey, even we are buying the HIMARS now. And while we talk about the Russian Empire slowly contracting, becoming smaller and smaller, connected to it, Ukraine, on the other hand, a draft law has been submitted to Ukraine's parliament that would amend law number 12378, making it possible to deploy personnel of the Ukrainian armed forces abroad. Wow. So they are going to fight in Sudan, they're going to fight in Syria, they're going to fight wherever they want against the Russian Empire. I mean, we already have some advisors, Ukrainian special forces in Sudan, fighting against the Wagnerites there. But this, if this is submitted, it will allow sending Ukrainian troops in larger quantities into conflicts with local powers versus Russian Empire, like Wagnerites. We're talking about 5 African countries, some Middle Eastern countries. Ukrainians, with all their expertise, their drone expertise, warfare, I mean, if they start training these guys, it's very bad news for the Russians. Finally, let's take a look into the Russian economy because, yeah, we're talking about inflation, we're talking about it tanking, but let's even zoom out even further. Let's talk about the economic model, because the capitalist system that was accepted after the fall of the Soviet Union, and Russians fully accepted it. They love money, they do. It is going to change. It's changing right now. Not for the rich, they will stay where they are, the oligarchs, but most of the Russia will go back to the Soviet 80s, which is known by the former Soviet states as stagnation. Russia is gradually switching from a market to a planned economy. This is the opinion of Igor Lipsitz, a Russian academic economist currently living in Lithuania. This opinion is also supported by other experts. How it works. The state will set prices. The Russian central bank will distribute loans, and the Russian treasury will directly finance the military-industrial complex. This follows from decisions already made by the Russian government. In December 2024, the Russian central bank did not change the interest rate from 21%, although, according to the local market economy, it should have been raised. So, in the market economy, it's easy. You have inflation, you raise the interest. If you don't do that, you are not playing according to the market economy rules, signaling to us that Russia is knowingly moving away from the market economy. The market economy works. Capitalism won. I mean, no country in the world is fully communist anymore. Even North Korea is exporting drugs abroad. They're hacking. Everybody needs money to work. Even China is capitalist. There's no fully communist country in the world anymore. But Russia now is going back to the system that proved itself to be not working, proved itself to be the worst system. They're going back to it. There are already many symptoms that market economy in its current form is dying in Russia. The Russian government is going to have to regulate prices. Russia is steadily moving to direct financing and projects of the most important sectors of enterprises through the treasury. In fact, this will simply be the most profitable business in Russia for officials to control those resources. The allocated money will be instantly sold on the market at a higher rate to those who are not allowed to access it directly. So this is full Soviet times. You want state funding to your project, and you gotta give some of that state funding to me later. This is how we make that deal. It's full corruption, and it will result in massively impoverished Russia. Some sectors will be getting a lot more money, like the military-industrial complex. That's how it was in the Soviet times. Everybody was poor, a lot of people were starving, but the military was massive and bloated. It's gonna be the same. Everybody connected to the military and the money flowing through that, they're gonna live fine, but the rest is going straight to the toilet. And they're doing that knowingly, by the way. The government knows what they're doing there because they have done it before. It's not the first time. Most of them were alive in the Soviet times. They know how this works. They want it back. So yeah, Russia is moving to a planned economy. I don't think it's going to take long for us to see again the introduction of, or the bringing back of the 5-year plan in Russia. Maybe it happens, who knows. And then we have a world where even China is capitalist in a market economy, but Russia is in a planned economy, in a hybrid economy of capitalism in some areas, but mostly planned. I would almost said socialism, but it's not socialism because socialism says that people will gain something from it, like free healthcare or free education. But in Russia, most hospitals are rotting and the schools are quite dangerous actually to be for kids. So I wouldn't call it socialism. It's a planned economy at its worst. Now, my friends, I want to guide your attention to Buy Me a Coffee monthly members. These guys are the foundation of my channel. They allow me to do what I do, and I like to do what I do, so I'm extremely grateful for them. So I'm going to butcher the names with my Estonian pronunciation. Erik Husen Us Army Vet Hardcore Ukrainian Defense Force Supporter. That's his name. I'm not making this stuff up. That's what he wrote, and that's what I'm going to read. Oh, I cannot say the email. Just Tateabel. Howard Kolterman. Vrato Doctor. Thank you to these weird named dudes for supporting the channel. If you like what I do, you want to help me out with it, become a monthly member of Buy Me a Coffee. Links in the description below. Until my next video, my friends, which will be on Monday, so be sure to be back. Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.
Kui mina ükskord noores eas võtsin vana naise, kui mina ükskord noores eas võtsin vana naise, siis tema kurat kiusas mind ühest päevast teise, siis tema kurat kiusas mind ühest päevast teise. Läksin surnuaiale, palusin seal surma, läksin surnuaiale, palusin seal surma. Tule surma, päästa mind, vii mu naine hauda, tule surma, päästa mind, vii mu naine hauda. Läksin koju tagasi, naine oli surnud, läksin koju tagasi, naine oli surnud, surmaingel oli ta oma kaasaks viinud, surmaingel oli ta oma kaasaks viinud.